Each year, the sea level rises,
setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control.
House on fire.
And today we're joined by a very special guest, Aguirre, an Emmy-award winning journalist who hosts Don't Trash Our Treasure, an environmental campaign. Louis has been a long-time and staunch defender of the planet as he brings awareness to environmental issues plaguing South Florida as he seeks for solutions. Louis has won 4 Emmy Awards for environmental reporting and has been recognized by the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County. Thank you for being here, Louis.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So could you give us some background on your career and why you decided to become an environmental advocate?
Boy, that's a loaded question. I think it all began as a kid watching Jacques Cousteau on TV and just being fascinated with the undersea world. I mean, that was the first time that we saw on television what was going on under the surface of the ocean.
That's a giant mystery.
A giant mystery, but it fascinated me. And so I always wanted to go on adventures with Jacques Cousteau. And I always knew that somehow my career would lead me on this path. I thought I wanted to be an oceanographer, but I wasn't very good in math and science.
Me neither, honestly.
But I was a good communicator, and I knew how to tell the story, so I knew that was going to be my trajectory. And even though I thought I wanted to be an actor, you know, the broadcast career really came calling to me. I focused on entertainment reporting for a long time, having gotten burnt out on doing news. And that's where I began my career, doing local news and going on the network news, and then finding a path to actually fulfill that acting bug that I had in me, and then marrying the two and doing entertainment television for a good, 15 years of my life, and then getting to a point where I realized that I didn't really care about pop culture. I cared about what was happening to our planet. And that gift came to me while I was anchoring a show in Los Angeles called The Insider, and I was invited by Discovery Channel to go behind the scenes of Shark Week. I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. And he goes, well, do you scuba dive? I go, no, but I'm going to learn. And I learned how to scuba dive, and they flew me all the way to Tahiti, where my first dive ever, we went to this place called the White Reef, and off the main island of Tahiti. And I was there with Eli Roth, who is an incredible, prolific director and an actor who's in that movie Inglourious Bastards, and has done a lot of slasher flicks and adventure flicks. And he was the host of this post-Shark Week nightly kind of talk show called Shark After Dark, and we were shooting some stuff with him, and they took me to the White Valley, and we dove, and the minute the boat got there, the entire boat was surrounded by fins, and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. I have never seen so many sharks in my entire life, but at that point, they'd already flown me all the way to Tahiti.
So
they put me up at some fancy hotels. I guess
it's
I got to dive in. So I did some background research on Tahiti, and they're mostly populated by gray reef sharks and black tips, which are known as the puppy dogs of the ocean. There are a lot of them, but they're not really aggressive towards human. So I was okay with doing that. Kind of. When you see the Discovery crew jump in the water with all their equipment and everything, and there's no blood and no one screaming, you're like, oh, okay, I think I can do this. But it defies all logic. It's like why am I doing this? Like a Popeye cartoon. The entire ship is just surrounded by fins. And they didn't even chum the water. The sharks are so accustomed to the dive boats showing up at the reef that just with the sound of the propellers, they immediately know, oh, they're going to feed us. So, yeah. So
Pavlov's dog.
Exactly. Pavlov's sharks. Exactly. So you jump in the water, and immediately, you become somewhat comfortable. You're surrounded by sharks, and there's some lemon sharks there that look kind of gnarly because they have the teeth that go out in 18 different directions. But, for the most part, no one is screaming, and it's quite a beautiful, serene moment as you're descending down to the bottom of the reef, and you're seeing, talk about beautiful, colorful, Disney-like Little Mermaid meets Finding Nemo, Technicolor Fantasia. The coral reefs in Tahiti are so healthy and they're so vibrant. It was just magical, the descent down to that beautiful reef.
That was such a way to describe it, by the way.
It seriously was what it felt like. I felt like I'm in a Disney cartoon right now. And as we descended down to the bottom of the reef, I see a huge shadow, and out of the corner comes a 17-foot tiger shark. Like, I did not sign up for this adventure at all. This is not the choice that I made. And at that point, you can't really do anything. You can't outswim it. You can't overpower it. You have to surrender to whatever is going to happen. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was scared. I think I might have wet my wetsuit a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And she swam She was very curious, big 17-foot tiger shark. We can tell she was female. I mean, I learned later, and I didn't tell in the moment. Trust me, I wasn't checking to see what the genitalia was at that moment, but I was told it was a female, 17-foot, humongous thing. I'd never seen anything so big in the water at the same time that I was in the water. And the minute your fear starts to die down, and it does eventually, even though she's circling you like 10 times, and she's coming up and she's checking you out, and she's looking at you, oh, you're still here? Oh, good. And she goes back, oh, you're still here. and then when you surrender to that moment, it's a very powerful moment. You realize that, oh my God, this creature that I've been taught to fear my entire life does not want to eat me. That she needs my voice to advocate for her, because we humans are killing 100 million sharks a year. We're depleting the ocean of sharks, which are one of our biggest carbon sinks. They help us sequester carbon. By depleting the ocean of sharks, we're not only eliminating these carbon sinks, but the sharks are in fact the doctors of the sea. They're the ones that keep our oceans free from pandemics and from bacteria. They maintain the balance, the ecosystem, that delicate balance is maintained by sharks. That's why they've been around since the beginning of time, since prehistoric days.
Basically,
they've survived, millennia, and we humans are taking them out every year.
And we've been around for so little time in comparison.
Exactly.
Like, that's
and
crazy to
we
really
are
think
the
about.
virus. I keep saying that. And so I realized that, the shark wasn't the monster. The humans are the monster, that the shark needed me. The reason it was coming up to me, it was because it was almost calling out to me. It's like, hey,
we need your help.
we need your help. So I went and I became a shark advocate in that moment. I raved about the experience. I aired the story on television, and all of a sudden, all these environmental groups started, coming up to me and DMing me on my Instagram saying, hey, would you mind amplifying this? Would you mind amplifying? Five Gyres reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing this thing to get people to be conscious of the plastic lids in their coffee cups and go topless, for the month of July, plastic-free July. Would you do this campaign for us? And then Born Free came up to me and they said, we're trying to save the elephants, in East Africa. Will you do this campaign for us? And I realized, I get this now. I'm not supposed to be talking about the Kardashians or the Real Housewives.
There's enough people talking about them anyways.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, and when I made that decision, it's funny how the universe works. That show, 18 months later, was canceled. And I'd been back to Tahiti again for another Shark Week dive. And I became already engaged in this space. And when I put the prayer out there, when I put the thought out there, it's like, I want to change the trajectory of my career. I don't really want to talk about this anymore. I want to talk about this. The show was canceled. And as I began looking for new work, Channel 10 called me up, which is exactly where I began my broadcast career 30 years ago. And they said, would you ever consider coming back and doing local television again? And I said yes, on one condition, that you let me champion environmental stories. And they said, sure, do whatever you want. Would you anchor the 4:30 and 5:30 newscast for us? Yes, but I want to talk about the environment. And they were like, yeah, come on down. I don't think they had any idea of the fuse they had just lit. And I came down here, and at first it was a drip of stories every once in a while, every couple of months. And then when we had the big fish kill in Biscayne Bay in 2020, we lost over 27,000 marine species
I remember
for
seeing
5
that.
days in August, and we had that horrible algae bloom that happened afterwards. I remember going on television, I'm saying, this is what the scientists have been warning us about for decades, that we were losing the meadows of seagrasses, that we're keeping our bay clean, that we're providing life and habitat for our marine life down there, and that because of the enormous amount of nutrient pollution that continued to flow into the watershed,
Suffocating them.
we were suffocating them. Exactly what happened. We had anoxia. We had pockets of anoxia in the northern bay, which is the part of the bay that's lost 97% of its seagrasses. It's depleted, and it's because of all the enormous amount of pollution that's coming in, primarily from the canals, the Little River Canal and the Biscayne Canal and the Miami River. Horrible, dirty, horrible water loaded with those horrible nutrients coming from septic leaks, sewage breaks, fertilizers, coming from ag, and obviously the dirty stormwater, which is another situation altogether. And all that just feeds into the Biscayne Bay, which kills the seagrasses and promotes algae growth and promotes this. When you have hot temperatures, no flow in the bay, and all this pollution, you have these pockets of anoxia. And so these fish suffocated to death. But we got a window into what we stand to lose unless we step up and address it with urgency. And so I went on TV that first night and I said, you see, this is what the scientists have been warning us about for decades. This is proof that our bay is dying. And my boss called me up on the phone and said, you can't go on TV and tell the people the bay is dying. I'm like, but sir, the bay is dying.
Yeah, like,
and I showed him all the
it.
research and the data. And I emailed him, and he goes, oh my God, I had no idea things were this bad. I don't think people in South Florida know how bad the situation really
Which
is.
so unfortunate considering like there's so many groups that have been fighting for this for years.
But it's only that's the human condition. It's only when our back is pressed up against the wall that we take action. And so this, almost as sad as it was, as devastating as it was,
it needed to happen for people to open their eyes.
And you have these people living in these multi-million-dollar homes, you know, on Biscayne Bay, these waterfront properties that all of a sudden for 5 days had dead fish, and then for the next 5 days had brown, stinky, foamy algae, you know, in front of their $1 million mansions. They were like, oh, this is real. You know, things are getting real right now. And so my bosses were like, well, you can't stop. You have to keep going with this. And so they gave me this special called Saving Biscayne Bay, where I talked about what was happening, why it was happening, and what we need to do to fix it. And the response on that special was so tremendous that on Earth Day in 2021, they said, we want you to start this franchise. It wasn't my name. My boss came up with a name called Don't Trash Our Treasure, where you talk about the important environmental issues that we're facing here in South Florida. And it's been 3 years. We just celebrated our 3-year anniversary. I'm on season 4, and I'm so excited that this community has embraced it and they've supported it. We got advertising and a sponsor on day 1, episode 1. And
That's
the support
amazing.
has grown ever since. And now I'm sitting here talking about it with you. And, you know, it's great. I love going to work every day, loving what I'm doing, and realizing that this matters in this space, and that more people are becoming informed, and more people are becoming engaged, and that they're making different choices, and they want to be part of the solution. And that's really what it's all about.
What got you here? Who or what inspires you these days to like talk about this when it comes to environmental impact?
So just being a local boy and growing up in a different Miami, you know, I grew up before there were 3 million people living in Miami-Dade County. And so, you know, growing up in a Miami where the bay was clear and you could see all the way down to the bottom, where there were seagrasses, where there wasn't trash everywhere, where the beaches weren't trashed, where we weren't dealing with these record-breaking temperatures, these triple-digit heat indices that are suffocating us, where we had healthy, thriving coral reefs. And just seeing the degradation of my backyard is moving me, that it's pushing me, it's engaging me into be this voice in this space. Yeah, I have heroes. Jacques Cousteau, I keep mentioning him as a hero. Sylvia Earle, who I just Zoomed with, I hate to name drop, but she's like the coolest in the world. It's like, you know, her deepness, you know, as the first woman to strap on a scuba tank and go diving, and has been to the depths of the ocean. And had come back to tell us about what's going on down there, and is now one of the loudest voices in the conservation space. You know, we're talking about creating hope spots, marine protected areas. We just named Biscayne Bay, the Florida Keys, and the 10,000 islands of the Southwest Florida coast as hope spots. That means that they're now getting international attention, that these spaces matter. These coastal areas matter because they are crucial and critical to the overall health of our ocean. So these areas need to thrive. So having conversations with people like Sylvia Earle, like the descendants of Cousteau. I'm very friendly with Ashley Cousteau, who's married to Philippe Cousteau. And so, you know, it's funny how these full circle moments come. Marlon Perkins also was a huge, you probably don't know who he is, but I grew up watching, you know, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and I wanted to go on safari. I've been 2 trips to Africa so far. And that really inspires me. Going to Africa and seeing our natural world, seeing, you know, the circle of life play out right in front of your eyes. That moves you. You realize there is so much to fight for. There is so much that we need to protect.
There
was so much that we had to give to the next generations. We're not the owners of this planet. We are the stewards of this planet. It's our responsibility to take care of it and pass it down to the next generation.
I love that.
You know, who are we if we don't step up and protect this beautiful, wonderful gift that we've been given?
Especially considering all it is that we can do and all that it is that we've done.
Yes.
We live here like every other animal, insect,
And we're all
fish,
connected.
bird. We're all connected.
All connected. It's all connected. It
Absolutely.
really is.
So with that also, when it comes to like South Florida, what companies, organizations, or community leaders would you say are really making a difference in South Florida, especially since you've paid extra attention with your show?
So, I mean, I promised my bosses that I wouldn't get political, but it's kind of hard not to because, you know, I think we need leadership right now. I think all of us have agency and all of us can do things in our everyday life to make things better, but we need policy. You know, we're talking about speed and scale to address the climate issue. We are perilously close already. The latest report coming up from the IPCC said that we're like 4.5 years from 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's pretty scary.
That is horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Same thing like in New York, I think they have like that timer.
Yes.
In Times Square.
Yeah,
like
the clock.
You see it.
Yeah, and we feel it. Not just that, we're feeling it here in South Florida.
We're feeling it everywhere.
We keep saying that was the hottest month ever on record, the hottest May ever on record, 2023, the hottest year ever on record.
Every month.
Every month,
For like 11 months now.
It's happening. And we know that fossil fuels burning, carbon dioxide and methane gas, those are the biggest contributors to the heating up of our planet. We know this. The science tells us it. It's very clear. Whether you believe the science or not, it's happening, So we need those leaders that are going to embrace the science, understand the urgency of the moment, and move us in that direction with speed and scale. And so you have to ask yourself that question. You have to become an informed electorate. You have to know who are the leaders in this space that are really going to make a difference and move us in that direction and help us mitigate not just the effects of climate change, but also help us bring down those emissions and get to net zero by 2040.
As soon as
2040. Well, we have to. I think the latest projections where we have to hit 9% in reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by incrementally by year by 2030 in order to even hope to even reach that benchmark. So the moment is now. It's not yesterday, and so we need people that are going to super speed us in that direction.
Absolutely.
And so you have to do your homework. And so I think that after we saw the fish kill in 2020, we saw that leadership in the county level. I'm not going to mention names, but we know who those heroes are who took this with urgency, who have green lighted or green lit, however you want to say it, impactful programs like the tech hub that we have now, the climate tech hub. That's also a leader in this space and moving us in those directions. We need innovations. We need innovators. We need to push the envelope, and we need to meet that. We need to make those innovations happen with urgency, with speed and scale, obviously. And so you have to look at what's happening on the national front. The Inflation Reduction Act, that was huge. $269 billion investments in climate action, and we're seeing the impact of that. We're seeing jobs in the green space explode exponentially. Florida needs to catch up. We're not the leader in solar,
and we're the Sunshine State.
And we are the Sunshine State. We're still getting 65 to 70% of our energy from fossil fuels. What's up, Florida? Come on.
And not naming names, but
not naming names.
But we just banned offshore wind for some reason.
Yeah, well, and not naming names. We are eliminating any mention of climate change from our curriculum. Not naming names, but you know who you are.
Not naming names. We're removing climate change from our laws.
Do we want that is that the leadership we want here?
That's absolutely not the
leadership. As our sea levels are rising, as our temperatures keep rising.
Denying doesn't change the reality.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely not. So I completely agree. This is a pivotal moment for us, everyone, as we decide what it is that we want to see moving forward, because I want to see a future. I know I'm kind of scared of the future when I think about it. I'm a fresh 23.
Right.
I allegedly have a lot of years ahead of me.
You do.
And I don't know what it's going to look like, especially with the sort of leadership, not naming names that we have currently. So I want to see a lot of change. But
that's what we have to do. We have to engage the youth to become more active in the political space.
Correct.
I know that I wasn't as lit as you were at 23 years old, even though I was already talking, had my career in television, so I think I was a little bit more engaged than other people my age. But I know that my contemporaries at 23, I mean, it was passive. They passively went and voted for the presidential election, and it was a popularity race for the most part. You really have to look at policy. You really have to look at platforms. You really have to know who these people stand for and where the money comes from.
And where
Follow the money.
That's
Follow
so
the money.
important.
Who is funding these campaigns? If they're getting money from the Koch brothers and they're getting money from fossil fuels, that's not your guy if you care about the planet.
Correct.
Sorry, or lady.
I absolutely agree. So I actually want to backtrack a little bit because you mentioned Miami-Dade counties being designated as a tech hub recently. So they were designated as a tech hub by the Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration in October 2023. So this was last year.
That's amazing. That means investment is coming. We're getting millions of dollars in investment to actually,
Correct.
move these innovations forward and scale them. Those that have
and
promise.
That's so important.
Yes.
Especially now, like you said, speed and scale. That's what we need right now.
Right.
So with that in mind, what South Florida climate tech innovations have you seen recently that give you a bit of hope for our community?
So I'm really interested right now in eco-friendly cement and concrete because we're obviously development is huge here in South Florida. It's one of our main industries is construction and real estate. And so if we're thinking about ways of still having a healthy, thriving real estate and development economy, we have to look at more sustainable ways of building and obviously turning to green infrastructure as well to be able to power these buildings. There's a great building that's going up in Brickell right now, 1428 Brickell. It's got the world's first solar backbone. So 40% of all electricity is going to come from this incredible, it's like these high-tech glass panels that are going to be along the backbone of the building. They're going to absorb the sun. They're going to store them in batteries, and they're going to be able to power the building 40% of the time. That's the equivalent of taking 900 homes off the grid completely
That's
a year.
amazing.
That's amazing. But those are the innovations that we need. We're seeing those innovations happening under the water. We're seeing these honeycomb artificial reefs happening that are going to help us not just foster the marine ecosystems because our coral reefs are depleting, but they're also going to give us the infrastructure that we need to fight up against storm surge and rising sea levels.
So funny you mentioned that. I don't know if you've heard any of our previous episodes, but not that long ago, I think like 2 episodes ago, we had on Anya Freeman from Kind Designs. She's been pushing for 3D printed artificial reefs.
Yes,
seawalls.
that's already happening.
Yeah, and like they base it off of like mangrove roots and like corals and like stuff that's normally found on our coast.
They're mimicking the mangrove concrete with sustainable concrete made with eco-friendly ingredients.
Correct.
Very important to mention that. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
They don't leak any of the toxic materials that's found in normal
There's no toxicity
concrete.
whatsoever. And then they have these artificial roots that mimic the mangroves that can provide habitat for fish and other marine life, but also protect us from storm surge and rising seas. There's a great organization called Ocean Rescue Alliance. They're doing great work in the artificial reef space. They have a project called 1,000 Mermaids where they're creating artificial reefs and they're casting mermaids as humans so that if you want to gift someone something beautiful, you can gift them a statue of a mermaid in your likeness, and those mermaids then get deployed down to the bottom of the ocean, again made with sustainable materials, and they're
as reefs.
There's enough of them, that they deploy at the same time, along with these artificial reef structures, where you have this beautiful underwater, kind of like a museum, with these mermaid structures and these artificial reef structures, and they all have these holes in them.
Yeah, like small grooves.
Small grooves where you can easily screw on these coral frags on them and promote healthy coral restoration. And so these things are happening. There've already been 3 deployed, 2 I think off of the coast of Palm Beach. The first one deployed off the coast of Hollywood. More is coming in that space. We have the Reef Line, this beautiful underwater museum that's soon going to be deployed on South Beach, where these major artists from all over the world are creating these underwater structures that will serve as underwater reefs that will also drive ecotourism. How beautiful it would be to get to South Florida and go diving 200 feet from the shores of South Beach and do a beautiful snorkel dive over this beautiful thriving coral reef. That's happening. That excites me. The other day, speaking of coral reefs, I had these 2 young men who came up to me. They both work for the cruise line industry, and they are avid scuba divers, and they were out paddling, and they discovered, oh my God, 450 feet from shore, there's a coral reef here, and it's not chartered. And I went out with them, sure enough, and I strapped on my scuba gear, and we went out and we dove that reef, and there's a thriving, beautiful coral reef.
That's awesome.
450 feet from the shores of South Beach. And it needs protection because right now there's boats that are speeding over it, probably even anchoring on it, trying to fish, and no one really knows that it's there. But these are the things that excite me. Every time we feel, oh my God, the planet's on fire, Mother Nature always shows us a window of what can thrive, what can survive, in spite of our unconsciousness, in spite of us not caring, in spite of us not doing enough or acting with the urgency that we need to in this moment.
Correct. The earth always finds a way.
The earth always finds a way.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. I always say this, like the planet will survive. It's the humans. We don't realize we're talking about our own existence.
Correct.
It's an existential crisis for us. Look what happened to the dinosaurs.
Correct. Look, we're acting like this is a planet with infinite resources.
Right.
When it's a planet with very finite resources that once depleted, we're going to have a very rough time. And the planet could bounce back. It always does.
It always
but
does.
It will take millions of years, and we will not be around to see it if we don't act right.
No. And it's not fair. I mean, it's not fair to your generation and the kids that you want to have. I know a lot of kids your age are even thinking about, do I want to start a family?
I'm one of them. I like the way things are going. It stresses me to even think about how would I bring another life into this planet, into this current society that we have, and feel okay about it.
Right.
Like, I don't see enough of the political will and the action to make the changes yet that need to happen.
But look what's happening with the youth climate movement. I think that really is, moving the needle. I see it more so on the international front than I am. I'm seeing it. I think I'm seeing it more and more here in Miami, thanks to the Clio Institute that has really engaged the youth movement. But we need the youth to show up at the ballot box. November is coming, and this is, every election cycle is like, this is a pivotal election cycle, but this one really is. There's so much on the line. There's so much at stake. And again, we need those that understand the urgency of the moment and are going to move us in the right direction. We need that leadership right now. Bold, courageous leadership is what this moment is calling for right now.
Absolutely. And speaking on the other organizations that really do a lot of work with youth, like the Clio Institute, I'm very biased. I think they do amazing work. But I also did want to shout out organizations like Engage Miami and Catalyst Miami that do a lot of work within that realm also, even if it's not climate focused. But
more voices, the merrier. Youth. It's like, you want to start your own NGO? Go for it. Do it.
Doesn't matter how many organizations there are. The more people that are involved in this space, the better. The more youth that are involved in this space, the better. I'm talking to my peers right now. I hope you
vote.
Come in.
I had a great conversation with Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I love him.
And it was during the Ask Me I did. I was so nervous to meet him because obviously he's an icon. You're talking about people that inspire you. He's an icon.
He's inspired generations of youth.
And you'd be surprised what an approachable, what a friendly, and what a warm and genuine person he is.
That makes me happy.
Guy. He's just a super nice guy.
That makes me happy.
And we had a great conversation. And of course, I asked him the pivotal question, like, what can we do? Like, what is the call to action? Obviously, we're here because we want solutions. What is the one thing that we can all do to move this in that trajectory with speed and scale? What was his answer?
Is it educate?
Vote. Vote.
You heard it here, folks. This is coming from Bill Nye the Science Guy.
So if you're 18, register to vote. If you haven't been active in the political field, get active.
Now is the time.
And get engaged and do your research and do your homework and know who you're voting for and what you're voting for.
Absolutely.
Vote.
If you may allow, before I move on to the next question, I have to do this. Bill. Bill.
Go ahead. The entire audience was doing it. So
yeah, literally. It has to happen.
I've met so many cool people in this space. I love what I'm doing, and it's because you make these connections, you make these things happen, and you meet people that really care. You meet people that have good hearts, that understand our connectivity, that understand that there is an army, an eco army that's growing, and that the trajectory I think of our world is changing. We either become a kinder, gentler, more compassionate world, or is the extension of humankind.
Absolutely. I feel a lot of the issues come from the fact that, at least in Western society, because I can't speak for the whole world, but the going trend seems to be we're so focused on individualism and what can I do to make myself happier, myself better, and that kind of is at odds with what needs to happen for us to. All right, so
we agree on so many things.
I know. I wonder
wow.
why. It's almost like we care about the environment.
I know.
Almost.
It's like a really good date.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't prepared for this.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, so moving forward.
Okay.
Talking about Don't Trash Our Treasure and you hosting it, obviously, you see and hear plenty of information about what's working and what isn't in South Florida. So what do you see as the biggest threat to our community when it comes to climate change?
Ignorance and apathy.
Yeah.
Ignorance and apathy.
Correct.
And it pains me so much, and I talk about this all the time. I am so inspired by you. I'm so inspired by the young people because they're the ones on the front lines every single day, and I see it every weekend. The ones who are hosting cleanups, the ones that are out there on the shorelines, picking up other people's trash, are people under 30. They're in their late teens, even younger than that. And I remember growing up in a very different South Florida when I was 15 or 16 years old. All I cared about was getting my party on, going to the beach, hanging out with my friends. I didn't have to worry about cleaning up other people's trash or, making sure that our shorelines weren't impacted by our negligence. And to see that these kids religiously show up every weekend to do something to mitigate the effects of human impact on our coastal environments, it's beautiful, but it breaks my heart. I'm like, this is not right. This should not land on you. You shouldn't have to be here cleaning up our mess, our inactivity. So apathy and non-engagement and not being educated, there's no excuse for that. And so
Especially
I think
in
that's,
this day and age with
really.
the expansion of how technology moves.
And I think that we need to actually teach people in grade school and have this be a regular, class that comes up in the curriculum as you grow older in life, how to use a trash can. Because apparently we forgot. I mean, apparently it's become very, very difficult, and people have forgotten how to use a garbage can.
Yeah.
People think, oh, I'm just going to throw my leftover or my plastic cup, God forbid, or this on the floor because I can't find a trash can around me. So, God forbid, I should hold on to this until I find a trash can and properly dispose of it. I'm just going to throw it on the ground because someone will pick it up. Or better yet, the county and the city pay people to clean this up.
That's what I was going to say.
That's their job.
That's what I've heard.
We got to get out of that mindset.
I've heard this so many times growing up by multiple people, not name dropping anyone. I hope they've learned from their mistakes. But something growing up that I heard a lot was, it's okay. Like, this is someone's job. Like, I'm creating more jobs. And it's like, no, absolutely not. Because that is not supposed to be someone's job. The responsibility of how you move around the world only falls on you.
So we have to attack apathy. And the best thing about Don't Trash Our Treasure, and I will say this, even though I've been doing television for 30 years, is that for the first time in my career, I see a real impact of the work that I'm doing. People are coming up to me and say, wow, that story you did, I had no idea things were that bad, or I had no idea that my actions were contributing to this problem, or better yet, what can I do to solve it? How can I be part of the solution? And so when people come up to me and they say that, how can I be part of the change? How can I make things better? I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's been the biggest reward. You talked about the accolades and the Emmys, and that's great. And I think all that does is amplify the brand and amplify the show, the segment. But for me, the reward is having people come up to me and saying, thank you. I didn't know this. I'm making different choices now. I'm taking action. I want to be part of the solution. That
awesome.
To me is the biggest takeaway.
That's awesome.
But I think we need to replicate that, and I want to see that happen, especially in the Latino stations. I think they should launch their own Don't Trash Forever, because obviously we are a melting pot, a giant melting pot. We have different cultures here. People bring their cultural habits with them from their countries, or maybe they don't care about these things.
Even their cultural knowledge. Some people have the knowledge on what to do, but they don't have the means or the space to enact some of those things.
A lot of it really is just education. It really is just engaging people. It's like, hey, this is happening, and you can help us by making different choices, and that needs to happen, across the board. So. I'm happy that Local 10 has seen the importance of environmental reporting, but I want to see that scaled. I think that, as reporters, sometimes we don't want to get scooped, and we want to take ownership of the story, and it all becomes about, self-aggrandizement, and, I'm the hero here. But no, if there was a way for me to replicate this and have this happen at my other stations, here in South Florida, especially with the Latin stations, I welcome that. I want there to be more voice in this. The Herald is doing an amazing job. I mean, Alex Harris is a tremendous reporter. Jenny Sahailovich, also at WLRN, that used to be with the Herald, does tremendous work at WLRN. But we need to scale that. There needs to be more climate reporting. There needs to be more environmental reporting,
and in different languages.
And
it
in
needs to be
different
accessible.
Accessible, yes.
We have, like you said, a big Latino community in South Florida. We also have a big Haitian community in South Florida, and I know Cleo does this with a lot of our materials and whatnot, is trying to translate it into at least 3 different languages: English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, to reach a broader audience, because that's, I think, the most important part of at least our community in South Florida, is making this information as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, because not everyone has access or understands the importance of the stuff that's going on, because they can't understand it, in the most literal sense possible.
And a lot of people don't know that their everyday actions really either can contribute to the problem or make things better. And so it's a thing about taking agency. All of us have agency in this. We all have skin in the game. We're all, You know,
We're all going to be affected by it.
We're all affected by it. Yeah, there's no escaping it. It is happening, and it's up to us. Who are we going to be in this game? What is our role going to be?
Absolutely.
You know, who's the character? Where does that come into play? So, we all need to take action. There's things that we can do every single day to make things better.
Absolutely. And considering our conversation has gone a little off the deep end and very into like a lot of the issues that we have in South Florida, which I know we have a lot to work on, especially when it comes to climate change and climate action in South Florida. What are some easy steps that you would say our listeners can take to make a difference for themselves, their families, their communities, the broader community as a whole?
Okay, so I know that this is probably a controversial thing that I'm going to bring up, but I think that right now, I think that there's enough in the space where you can have a choice and it doesn't have to break the bank, but I think that all of us should really be looking at electric vehicles. I've been a big fan. When I moved to California in 2014, I got one of the first, and it changed my life. And I've been driving EV ever since then. There was a time during the pandemic when I didn't have one because I crashed my car and had to go back to, and that hurt. And the crash didn't hurt, but having to go back to, a gas-powered car after driving EV for 6 years really hurt. And every time I drove up to a gas station, it hurt my soul a little bit. But the day I got rid of that car, I went back to EV. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And it's you have no idea whether you embrace this or not. It'll change your life. The fact that you don't have to pull up to a gas station anymore, and you can just charge your car at home. And right now, there are different models and different price points, and that is the future. We have to really move away from gas-powered everything.
Yeah.
So look at what you can do. If it's not EV, invest in solar. Despite what's happening right now with FP&L and our state lawmakers, and there is advancement that we can have. Look what's happening with 1428 Brickell and the solar backbone. Look at ways for you to look at what your energy consumption is every day, and how you can move the needle on that. Maybe it's not running the air conditioning 24/7. Maybe it's making sure that the AC is only operating while you're inside the house. What we eat. Obviously, moving away from red meat and going more towards a plant-based diet. It doesn't have to be, if it doesn't have to be every day.
Yeah.
Start with a meatless Monday. Know that every choice that we make every single day makes an impact.
Absolutely.
And what you take from the grocery store. It's hard when you walk into a grocery store and everything comes packaged in plastic. We just become numb to it. But it's like no. Plastic is another offshoot of fossil fuels.
And not even just that. You're consuming these plastics.
Yes,
Your food is touching these plastics. You are consuming.
You are
these
consuming.
plastics.
They found nanoplastics in human blood. They found it in breast milk. We're consuming it credit cards. In placentas. It's disgusting.
It's in everything.
It's an epidemic. And so we can't. There's no excuse for us to go to a grocery store and take anything in a plastic bag. No. My bag, the back of my
I'm assuming
EV is all these tote bags, and I'm very proud. I make a big show of my tote bags, and when they even attempt to put a thing in my plastic, I don't shame the clerk, but I make a big proclamation like, "Oh no, I brought my own bag. See how better this is for the planet." And I say it real loud so that everybody in line, I'm like that weird guy that does that. And whenever anybody offers me a plastic water bottle, I always bring water with me everywhere.
Yeah,
I usually have a thermos, and I brought my glass bottle. Just little things like that. There are things you can do every single day. Become informed, become engaged, read, watch. I know that the news has a really bad reputation in this day and age because we're so tribalized and politicized. But this shouldn't be political. I mean,
it really affects everyone across the board.
We're all affected by this.
Step outside
and
right
there,
now.
And there are people working on both sides of the aisle that understand the urgency of the
Correct.
moment, that are moving the needle forward.
Correct.
And I can name names, but I won't. But there are people on both sides, and it really
We will keep names out of this conversation for the sake of
But there are people who
peace.
have different political ideologies that still can come to an agreement on this
climate.
one issue.
Yeah, correct.
On what's happening to our planet. So
Climate action is not partisan.
it's not partisan.
You want to know why it's not partisan? Step outside right now and tell me how you feel. It's not going to be nice. It's going to be too hot. I did just also want to mention, now that we're talking about some ways our listeners can make a difference, I want to shout out Clio, the Clio Institute, once again, who powers this podcast. We love you. Big hearts. So the Clio Institute's webpage has a tab called the Event tab. And I don't know if you can guess, it has a lot of events that you can take part in that incrementally help us in the fight against the climate crisis. So if you wanted to learn more and find ways that you can get involved, you should go to www.cleoinstitute.org, spelled CLEO.
And you should also be following Cleo on Instagram
Absolutely.
and following Cleo on Twitter.
Absolutely.
And TikTok too. You have a TikTok page?
I believe we have a TikTok
All right,
page
there you
too.
go.
So Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it,
Everything.
it's Twitter.
Yeah.
TikTok.
I can never call it X. I'm sorry.
I refuse to. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It makes no sense. That was
No.
such iconic. Like
I know.
I don't know. Anywho,
We won't go into that. Anyway.
follow us on those pages and go to www.cleoinstitute, INSTITU institute.org, and go to our events page to find other little ways that you can get involved. And spoiler alert, you have to spend no money.
Yeah.
It's free and easy.
Do you know how many people get inspired by just going to an event like that? I can't tell you how many people go to their first cleanup because they have to do community hours for whatever reason. And they realize,
lights
oh
a
my
fire
God,
in them.
it lights a fire. It lights the fuse. Go to an event, and you'll see.
It's literally,
you will become
it's what got me into the
engaged.
climate space. I actually went to a rally that was a Fridays for Future rally that Cleo
Yeah.
hosted up in Tallahassee when I
Yeah.
was a student there. And I tried to get friends to go with me. Everyone was like, oh, I'm busy. I can't go. And I was like, well, I guess I'll go. I don't have anything to do that afternoon. So I made my little poster out of cardboard. I pulled up there by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like the sense of community that was there, I knew no one.
That's the best part.
That's the best part. Like
Yeah.
we were all there with a common goal, and just knowing that like I felt anxious about the climate, so I went there on my own despite knowing no one, and knowing there were other people like that in this that felt the same way as me, like made me feel that my
Yeah.
voice could do something, which is what got me into the climate space to begin with, and got me to really focus on the intersectionality of a lot of things. I was an international affairs student, has nothing to do with climate exactly per se, but not
I think it does.
like, it has
International
everything.
affairs has everything.
But
It's the
like-
global problem.
exactly. But when you think about like that major, the first thing that might not come to
Business.
mind is not climate,
Right.
but everything can lead back to climate.
Everything is about climate.
So I actually wanted to like ask you, because I've asked this to our last guest, and I think this is a really important thing to kind of hit on.
Okay.
I'm someone who works in a nonprofit space, and I feel that a lot of people, a lot of youth, older generations also, when they think of climate action, they think of organizations like Cleo. They think of nonprofits and organizations that are doing the work. But you are not working in a nonprofit. You work at a news station. So I kind of wanted to like hear what you had to say, and maybe you can talk to our audience about
Okay.
this.
I'm glad you brought that up.
How can anyone get into the climate space?
Okay. So, again, when I was offered the opportunity to come back to South Florida and anchor the newscast, they pay me to anchor the newscast. That's my job. I have to show up at Channel 10 every day at 2:30, sometimes 3 o'clock.
Sometimes.
And stay through the 11 o'clock newscast, because sometimes I'm reporting for the 11 o'clock newscast. Sometimes I'm anchoring at the 11 o'clock newscast. So my shift is from 2:30 to 11:30 p.m. I have to be in the studio. I get a couple of hours off for dinner. The work that I do for Don't Trash Our Treasure, that's my time. I work weekends, I work mornings. So we all have to make, this is important to you, you will find time to volunteer. You will find time to dedicate your treasure, your talent, your voice to this action. And I think that all of us need to find time to be a part of those change makers that are needed right now to move us into this next chapter.
Absolutely.
I think that all of us need to make space, make time for this, because this matters. There's nothing more important happening right now than action in this space.
Absolutely. And action in this space will inspire action in all the other things.
Oh, we need a tidal wave. you know?
Correct. And it needs to start somewhere. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's a lot of stuff happening in our community and in the world right now internationally that's pushing the needle into people
But
taking action.
Here's the great thing, is that all of us are born with all these wonderful gifts and talents that are God-given, you know, and all of us can find something that we have in our toolbox, in our arsenal, to make a difference. Whether if
Absolutely.
you're a great artist, maybe you dedicate your art to inspiring us to take action through your work. If you're a writer, you become a writer in the space, or you become a journalist. If you're a filmmaker, you make beautiful documentaries, or you make films that, you know, underscore
The importance of-
urgency of this moment. You know, so everybody has something to do. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a writer, an artist, an athlete, even
A parent.
a parent, so important. Yeah, so important. So There are things that we all can do. There are things that we have. There are talents that we're born with. All of us can do something to move the needle in this space.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you put it that way because, and I mentioned this before and I'll mention this again because it just ties beautifully into what you said. Any profession, any talent, any hobby that you have, you can use that to amplify climate action. You can use it to amplify the environment and ways to protect it. You can insert yourself into the climate movement using what you already know. You don't have to learn anything new.
And you will be surprised how much fun you have. I know that I'm working crazy hours, but I love my job. I love waking up doing what I do. I've never been more in love with my work and my career than I am right now in this moment. So you'll be surprised how that just and the stars will align. Like when you give back, karma is a real thing. When you give back, the planet gives back. And you will reap the benefits of this. Your life will flow. You'll receive the gifts of the universe. I mean, things will flow. Trust me on this. Because I'm a living example of this. The minute I decided that this was going to be the focus, my life just flows. It really does. It really flows.
That's awesome.
I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Amazing. Do you have anything else you want to tell our listeners, maybe youth, maybe others who are listening in or watching this podcast?
We live in a magical place. People from all over the world come to South Florida every single year just for a taste of what we live with every single day. Take a moment, go outside, and realize what we have. Realize that we have an incredible backyard with incredible creatures and beautiful water and beautiful trees. And understand that that is our gift, and that is also our challenge. The gift is that we have this to enjoy right now, but the challenge is that we have to protect it and restore it and make sure that it exists for generations to come. When you go outside and you give yourself that time, that moment in nature, and you connect with nature, trust me that you will do everything in your being to stand up and protect it. Give yourself that gift. Go outside, go to the Everglades, go to the beach, go to Biscayne Bay, go to Biscayne National Park.
It's all in your backyard.
It's all in your backyard. We are so lucky. We are so blessed to live here in South Florida. Fall in love with your home and stand up and protect it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Louis, for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So that was such an amazing conversation I just had. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling very inspired, and I hope you do too. And if you take anything away from today's episode, is that we can all make a change. No matter how big or how small, anything you do will make a massive impact to your community. If you wanted to find more ways to stay involved, remember to go to our website, www.clioinstitute.org, and head on over to our events page. Even if you're not from South Florida, we have events all over the state, and we're constantly updating them on there. Thank you for listening to our show today. House on Fire is powered by the Clio Institute and could not be made possible without the support of the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Family Foundation. This podcast is hosted by me, Tanya Toledo, and is produced by Unicorn Fire Studios. The intro music is composed by the Microscopic Orchestra. If you're digging what we do here at House on Fire, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite listening platform. It helps us out so much. And for all my visual folks out there, because I know you exist, we're also posting on our YouTube channel, the Clio Institute, every time that we drop a podcast. So remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you get notified whenever we're on here too. And remember, you can make a change. Does not matter if you work in the climate space or not. Everyone can be part of this movement. So until next time, stay cool, stay inspired, and do something to make your life just a little better.